Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at the original Sherlock Holmes and his Baker Street Irregulars. Sherlock Holmes is brought to you by Baskerville Productions. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 12 and up, and games range anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. In the original Sherlock Holmes and his Baker Street Irregulars, each player will utilize their crew of irregulars, known as BSIs, to visit locations, gather witnesses, and inspect artifacts in an attempt to make the key arrests to secure your place as legitimate rival to the master detective, Sherlock Holmes. The game features over 100 pieces of art, many inspired by the original artwork of Sidney Paget. Alright, just a quick look at setup. First we'll take the villain deck and shuffle it up, dealing out 5 cards to the table. These villains are the ones you're arresting throughout the game, and they all have very different point values. Then we're taking evidence decks, and we're going to shuffle those up individually, all denoted by Roman numerals on the back, and placing those on the board as well. There's some other things around the board that take note of. You have these cards of Holmes, Watson, and Wiggins. These are going to be cards that you get to acquire at the end of the round. And then each player gets their own BSI tokens in a color as well as a cube that corresponds for the arresting track. And you'll randomly place those on that arresting track. And then each player is going to get an inspector. You'll take those and you'll shuffle them up and deal one randomly to each player. Now, what's important about inspectors is that on the back of their card, it will show what potential bonus points you can get at the end of the game, and they're all very different. So you want to keep that in mind as you're acquiring evidence cards and acquiring villains. And then, based on the player count, you will draw that many cards from each of the 5 evidence decks. You'll shuffle all those together for this first round and deal out 5 to each player. Alright, so before we jump into gameplay, let's take a closer look at these evidence cards. Now, there's several icons to take note of. In the top left corner, you have symbols that represent artifact. You have one that represents location and a witness for the third one. Now, these icons are important because they might give you bonus points at the end of the game based on your inspector. Now, below that are the key icons. These are the ones that you're trying to acquire enough of that match the villains that are in play so you can arrest them. And then some of those icons will have a tassel color off of them. Again, this is something to keep in mind as you get bonus points at the end of the game, one of the ways. Now, in the bottom right corner is one of the big things also, is that you have a cost of the card. And this is a drafting game. So you'll be drafting these evidence cards, but you still have to pay the cost in BSI tokens. And once you run out of those tokens, you're out of luck for buying more cards. So you have to keep that. It's a balancing act as well about which cards to acquire when. Now, below that is a fun bit from the Conan Doyle stories of Sherlock Holmes. It's an abbreviation of one of those stories, but it is another possible way to gain bonus points at the end of the game if you can have matching stories. So those are the basics of these evidence cards, but they're really the key cards that you're going to be playing throughout the game. All right, so let's take a closer look at gameplay now. So there are 4 rounds to this game, but each round consists of 4 cycles, and in those 4 cycles there are 3 phases. The first phase being the investigation phase, and this is where you're drafting cards. You're taking a look at the cards that were dealt to you. You're looking to see which icons you want to acquire so you can go after certain villains that are in play, or maybe you're just looking for bonus points as well. So those are a couple different reasons you might draft a card, as well as looking at the bottom to see what you can afford from the BSI tokens you have in hand. So you'll pick a card and play it face down. Each player will do that, and you'll pass the cards on. It is a simple drafting mechanic. And then when everybody's ready, you flip the cards and you pay the cost. And then we move to the arresting phase. First thing we look at is the arresting track. Who's at the top? That player will get to decide first if they choose to arrest anybody in play. You're trying to match icons at the bottom of the card with your evidence cards. You have to have the matching set. Now, each of the villains have varying point values. Specifically, looking at Moriarty, he's worth 30 points, but look at all the icons it requires to capture him. It's a lot. So generally, you're going after maybe some of these simpler villains, but Moriarty is definitely a game changer if you can grab him. Now, if you are able to arrest, then your cube will move to the bottom of the arrest track. But if you can't, then you just pass and each player in turn see if they're able to arrest. And if you were able to arrest someone, well, the cards that you used to arrest that particular villain are now then flipped and no longer in play. They're going to be used later for totaling up points at the end of the game, but you'll no longer use them for evidence. That villain is then moved into your play area and a new card is drawn. So it's that simple for arresting, and you're definitely accumulating cards, evidence cards, to hope to give you bonus points at the end of the game. And then you move to the tail phase. This is where you're tailing one of the villains that you're trying to arrest. You're going to place one of your BSI tokens on that villain, which this token now acts as a wild. It can take the place of one of the icons on the card, which is super handy. But multiple people can be going for the same villain, so it could be a bit of a race, especially looking at where the arrest track is. Now, you have to have BSI tokens in order to do this. If you don't, then you can't tail anybody. And you can only ever have one tail in play at any one time. And so then you'll continue this way, moving through the cycles and the different phases until you get down to those last cards of the draft. Those last cards are then compiled into the middle of the table, and you move to the BSI stage, the bonus stage. And here, the first thing you're doing is counting how many BSI tokens you have left. The player with the most is going to get to go first. They can either choose one of the cards from the middle that haven't been drafted yet, paying the cost, as long as they have BSI tokens left to do so, or they can choose to take Holmes, Watson, or Wiggins, one of those boards, and place it in their play area. These boards are going to give you bonus actions, basically, on your next round of play. So in this bonus stage, there's some interesting choice to be made between getting an additional card or grabbing one of these boards. You know, if you grab Holmes, it can move you to the top of the arresting order, or potentially you can ignore one of the icons that are in play. So each of these different boards are going to give you very different powers, but they're only usable once in that next round, and then they go back to the middle of the table. Also important to note that at the end of that bonus stage, you will get back all your BSI tokens for that next round. So gameplay will go like this until you've hit 4 rounds, and then you'll calculate score. You'll get one more chance to do some arresting and so forth, but the first thing you're looking at is all the villains that you have arrested. You total up the point total. Then you take all your evidence cards and you look at the back of your inspector. Now you have 3 different options here based on the inspector you're using about how to get some bonus points, but you can only pick one of these options, and you'll total those points as well, and the player with the most points at the end of the game will be the ultimate inspector, worthy of the name Sherlock Holmes. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now, you know, this game plays very quickly and is very family friendly. I like that a lot, and I played multiple times with my family, super engaging. The thing here is that the theme of the Sherlock Holmes really does come through, and the drafting mechanic with having to spend BSI tokens, that works really, really well. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.